looking for things which stir us. We're looking for images and theatrical moments, theatrical transactions, which create a certain feeling inside us that we haven't given a name to yet.
That early stage of trying to find the piece, of trying to find the form and even the method, almost always involves going through a period of being at sea, of just confronting a void and not knowing. You know, when I first started making work, I imagined that we would discover a process that would give us reliable results for good experimental theater. That doesn't happen. So ironically, the way to not be frustrated in the end is to remain frustrated in the beginning.
For this project with Mimi LIEN, we're looking for something specific that neither Mimi nor I can put into words just yet. Right now it's really an intuition that feels like it's on the right path. It's really a relief to have the opera and the levity and cheekiness. We were both really into these weird capes that you guys made as a big spatial intervention, but then they hang you up. You want to try one time and we'll see how it goes? Yeah. Cool.
Pig iron often starts with an encounter with a particular thing, whether it's starting with the music or starting with movement, but now is the moment when we're going to start with the design and then have the piece grow out of that. When you start with the set, the design becomes the instigator of the piece. And so I, as the designer, become both co-conceiver and co-leader.
So right now we're starting work on a piece called Superterranean. That's the working title. Mimi's designs have been really integral to many pig iron pieces. In this, we really wanted to look at her design practice not as something that serves other ideas in the room, but as though it can give birth to a unique kind of theater.
Yeah, it's really nice to be in a room where I'm devising instead of working on a script. We're in dialogue with these scenic elements and scenic concepts and scenic philosophies that Mimi has. And that's really fascinating. It's a real interesting reason to get up in the morning and come to work, is to see what sort of dialogue we're going to have with Mimi's brain.
I think developing a language as an ensemble is one of the most rewarding things about the process. And sometimes there's no words around why something feels right. You're just like, I saw it, someone did this thing on stage, and everyone's like, yes, that. You can sometimes use the wisdom of the ensemble to be like, does everyone feel like that was significant?
The performers are all writing on their feet. Everything that's created through an improvisation, ends up being fodder for the piece. So in a way, we're working on dream images and perhaps illogical series of events to figure out what the synthesis might be.
Let's cluster.
Cool. Great. Part of me wants to travel with this.
Yeah.
Partially because I like the idea of like the sound of it and like the long train of it going.
Do you want to go back and forth or around?
I can go around.
It's pretty standard for me to go to the acting ensemble and say, well, I know up to this. These are the things that I know, and I'm puzzled about where we go next. And we work some of that out in discussion, and some of that gets worked out actually on the stage, improvising and putting the ideas to the test. I mean, the things that are hardest about working this way are exactly the same things that are best. And I used to think when I was a young artist that if you couldn't express what you were trying to do in clear words, then you weren't really doing anything. And over the past 10 years, I've done a 180 on that, and I'm only interested in the spaces in between, the things no words can fully describe, emotions that don't have a name.
In this setting, the structure is made up as you go along. As a stage manager, I am trying to do the best I can to document the structure versus the structure being imposed. This is my first time working with pig iron. I've worked in devised theater before, but not with this company. So it's for me also learning about the people in the room and this process and being very sensitive to the process and to help with whatever structure is needed.
When I was a younger actor, I did a lot of shows that were devised, built from scratch, like with people like Reza Abdo, or working with Richard Foreman. The difference there is that both Richard and Reza were in their own way a little autocratic, especially Richard Foreman is very autocratic. And Dan is also very much in charge, but in a very different way. He doesn't know necessarily what he's looking for, and he's very open about wondering what he's looking for, but he knows exactly how he wants to get there.
Everything that the performers are creating is documented and recorded on video. So after this workshop, I'm going to go back into my studio, figure out what the final design is. I have some thoughts, but certainly in the past week and a half, there have been so many things that have come out of improvisations that I could never have expected.
I've been doing what is called devised theater for decades before it was called devised theater. I understand that it's useful to come up with a term, but it still feels a little odd to me. What I object to in the use of the word devised theater is it seems to be making a wall between what we're doing in this room and what you're doing when you create a play. But I find that's really the same thing. Here, our text, in a sense, it's not in words, it's Mimi LIEN's design concepts. But I feel like I have the same relationship to her design concepts as I would to pages in a stack.
I have always preferred the term experimental theater to devised theater because I treat everything that we do as a company as an experiment. And I think that's what distinguishes it. But also, it's a term that seems to get used to describe just about anything in the theater that isn't a very specific, narrowly defined commercial theater model. So, Pete, one thing I want to look at in a lot of this today is just to start to try to tighten a lot of this up. Well, or see if it needs tightening up and where. Usually, we will begin by just assembling a group of people who are interested in working on the next project. That group of people becomes a sort of precondition for whatever the next piece will be. That group doesn't always stay together through the end of the project, but it's within that group that the initial ideas get generated. Often, I will come to the group with an idea, usually not a very specific idea. What's happening at that stage in the development of a piece is a lot of free associating. The first thing that we do is we look for any kinds of sources for what we might stage.
Why listen? He'll be on all afternoon.
Will you give him $10, please?
$10. Anyone $10 for the company? Let's change the subject.
Yes, I love women. I dote on them.
Okay. All right, well, it's interesting to sort of have it run smoothly because I learned a few things.
When I finally moved to New York, I had the great fortune of working immediately with Richard Maxwell, with Blue Man Group, with Worcester Group, and Richard Foreman all in the same year. It was almost too much. I might have been too young for that. And generally with downtown experimental theater, in my mind, it's a true ensemble focus. If there's a script in existence at all, its author is the stage manager. They're the ones who have written everything down. So if such a thing as a script, it would be hers.
You're more interesting being backgrounded as you talk to us and stand in front of them than it is to background them while you're doing that.
Yeah.
The foreground is a much better place for the background, I think. There's a sort of collective understanding that we're looking for in what we're doing, and we can sense that there's consensus on an idea, usually just through how much the room in general seems to enjoy what they're doing. We use humor as a gauge. We try not to take ourselves too seriously.
So it's Kate and Maggie, board smoking, playing chess until at some point.
Yeah, and this is, and this can provide you with substance, but it's buried,
Right, so we're paraphrasing, but using about the same amount of words.
Yeah.
And that's good that it's a click track.
Yes, I think that's all it needs to be at this point.
There are lots of jokes, which is great. Because you get the idea that there is no idea that is too silly, and you get the idea that there is no idea too strange, and so you should contribute whatever those silly, strange ideas are, and they will be at least heard, if not embraced.
Throwing it out. A good idea, but perhaps you're dumping the baby with the bathwater.
We may have gone rid of this, that. We're smart. Aren't we, thank God? Smart people getting smarter. That's all we need. Stop it with that noise, will you?
Okay, so I thought there was a cue for Gavin to go over to the board.
Yeah, we didn't. I don't know when
isn't a cue
that
for
cue
him to
is.
come over now.
Ben's supposed to go over at some point, but
What
maybe
would
it should be when he wakes up.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, yeah. I think I misunderstood that we had found a place that we would go over. But
No.
You still want that, but I think.
sitting around among a group of people, thinking out loud, talking a lot, trading different analyses of ideas, and this can be very tempting, but the actual act of trying to stage something, moving actors around in space, will always give an answer, and a more satisfying answer, and usually a quicker answer than any amount of very intelligent discussion.
Ready, guys?
Yes.
Here we go.
Gavin, hold still. Down.
stand by, everyone. Stand by. And go.
Thanks so much, everybody. Really nice adjustments. Let's come to the same lane and talk about the next crazy things we're gonna do. Cool. So there's this feeling of cause and effect, transmutation, but also as though like you pump an energy into the groundwater and then 10 feet away it causes a bunch of birds to fly up or something.
Yeah, I guess that implies some kind of network that you don't understand, some hidden network that you don't understand.
It's not about us, it's really about the space, right?
I think so. It's not character, it's about the space.
I started with spaces that I just have this personal, visceral response to. And a lot of those spaces are underground spaces, hidden spaces, urban infrastructure. They weren't designed for any aesthetic purpose. Their design is purely driven by function. And yet, there's a spiritual quality to these spaces because they seem so intricate and specific and filled with purpose. And also, often the scale of them is really massive. It's kind of beyond human comprehension.
We're sort of doing this strange dance of design, then proposing content, and then the content kind of speaking back to the design and seeing which one feels more generative.
This show, we're doing a lot of thinking about what are all these systems that we take for granted. What is this web of civilization that holds us up that we can ignore so we can live our lives? These are some of the things that we're getting into, and it's a lot to think about.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming out on this Monday night, December 3rd. We are already in the middle of winter. So we're going to be performing for you today. We might be stopping. We might be restarting and stopping and restarting again. Hard to say. Welcome to our folks from Atlas Obscura and TMZ. There's an interesting, as far as the TMZ element.
So in this case, we got together and we started talking about some current political issues, which is a very, very unusual thing for us to do. That's usually not the focus of our work. One thing that seemed to characterize a lot of the political discourse right now was lying, not telling the truth. We got interested in the idea of how a piece of theater lies or tells the truth to its own audience. So we started to think about, the whole idea of a curtain speech. And I thought it would be very interesting to use that format, but play with the truth.
Yeah, so everything here is going to have utility of some sort, except for this. There's actually a function to this. It's not a problem.
What are you goggling at? Your moon. Will your young woman come today, do you think?
She said that she would.
Then it's time she was here. It's gone 12. I'm sorry if I'm being indiscreet, but are you just friends or is there more to it?
Meaning what?
There's an idea about theatrical truth, that you want to be a truthful actor, which is a little bit silly if you think about it, because most of acting is putting on clothes that aren't yours and saying words that aren't yours and pretending to be a person you've never been. But then at the same time, as soon as you do all of those things and you say those things and you're wearing those clothes, then they are yours. So the idea of truth in a play that is a fiction is slippery. The lie that we're working with that's maybe subtle is that we're starting the play. The play is the curtain speech, and so the lie is that this play is the play that people are supposed to watch.
I need a better answer for that.
Great.
I feel like I'm trying to finesse something that is not you know.
Finessing.
Well, the finesse is not what it needs. It just needs a stronger choice.
Okay.
So, hold on. We're working on how to move seamlessly from this pre-show moment into the dialogue from a play. And in this case, we chose Chekhov. There's something about Chekhov plays where the people are sitting around not doing very much. And so that presented an interesting opportunity to move from this curtain speech into the play itself and out again.
Where we are right now, we've had this 2-month residency at the Collapsible Hole. Most ERS work tends to take at least a year. So, and it's not a year that is packed month to month with work. We will put things to bed, so to speak. The next step would be to revisit this in the spring. We'll start exactly as we did this time. As many actors as we can in the ensemble to sit in a room, watch the footage of what we did this past couple of months, talk about it, maybe recreate some of it, and then hopefully start new directions.
In the theater, when you sit down in an audience, you're watching something live. Whatever was planned could still fall apart, could go a different way. It's a defining characteristic of live performance. I think that's another reason why we like playing with this idea of failure, of the unexpected. So Gats is that staging of The Great Gatsby. It's a performance that takes about 8 hours, about 5.5 hours of reading the book. We didn't think that would really work. When we first had the idea to stage the entire novel, we thought it was an idea that would most likely fail, but it would fail in an interesting way, and it would yield something interesting. That was our experiment, to read every word without editing it. The idea of failure as a generative concept is something that was introduced to me by an academic friend of mine, Sarah Jane Bales. I think it's become a popular topic in writing about performance. When we talk about failure, we're really talking about embracing the unknown in what we do. In a certain way, we're interested in the ideas that don't work. Because when you pursue an idea and it fails and it doesn't work, you tend to arrive at another idea. But you arrive at that idea in an honest way and through the experience of attempting something and failing.
Experimental theater is all about sort of never starting over, but always folding in. Every accident is a holy sort of like mystical opportunity sort of idea.
Like you never know what's going to be the thing, right? Often it's the thing that you don't intend that's the key to the whole piece.
That it's always important to embrace your limitations. If you don't have a good space to work in, if you don't have enough money to produce a show, whatever it is that seems like it's lacking, find a way to embrace that. If you have nothing, you have enough.